is probably why Democrats are pushing so hard on the illegal immigration thing. They cannot replace their worldview. It's gone. And with the sentiments in this country on illegal immigration, I hate to be crass, but it's a self-correcting problem, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Ultimately, the math will win out.
We're good. Let's go party.
Well, I mean, the question is, what kind of devastation will we experience until the problem corrects itself?
Yeah. Well, I do think that, because we were talking about Trump and then credit and all these different things, but I do think it's incredibly important for us to shift the culture. Yeah. We have to talk about, yes, are things getting more expensive? Yes, of course. But listen, broke people have children too.
That's right.
They just do, and they find value in having children. And maybe you don't need this. And there are legitimate situations where maybe you just don't need these things. There's a value in having a child. You just named a moment where you have multiple generations on the phone. You can't put a price tag on that, right? It is something that it is natural, it is beautiful to experience. And I don't care how much tax credit you give, you can't replace that with $5,000. Right. So I do think that we have to talk about it as far as a culture, the immediate going to, oh, children are a drain, children are this, and this remixing children as being, by virtue of someone else creating them, they didn't ask to be here. Somehow you blame them for draining you, right? And that's what I kind of talk about in my book, this element of selfishness, this element of, I don't want to sacrifice. Right? Because once you become a parent, you have to sacrifice for someone who cannot do for themselves. That's where the children, they are unable to do that. Your child can't get in a car, go somewhere, get a job, and take care of themselves. You have to do that. So it means you have to sacrifice time and effort and money. But there is something absolutely wonderful about that. The best time I ever had when it came to raising my son was his first year. His mother went back to work. I worked overnights. I would pick him up right after work, and I would watch him all day. I would get like 3 hours of sleep. And I was exhausted. I would take days off just so I could sleep. But it was the best time because I got to watch my son grow up. Even though I was exhausted, I would take a nap when he took a nap. And I can't replace that. And it built a bond. Like, you can't offer me money that would replace that feeling I had raising my son. And remember, men don't care about raising children. Remember, that's part of the culture. No, there's something absolutely beautiful about that. Being next to my son every day, changing his diapers, feeding him, watching him grow, tickling him, watching him laugh. There is so much wonder and beauty in this particular act as far as being a father that we do not talk enough about.
Amen.
Indeed. Well, so let's help out some young guys these days. My view of this manosphere stuff, whatever you want to call it, I don't know, is I think these guys are how can I say this? Cowards, maybe.
Avoidant.
Pussies is the word they might want to use.
Many of them are.
But I'll explain why I think that. You get these guys that they get real tough. You know, they sound tough. They work out, they get ripped, and they say, you got to bang all these women, screw that. They're talking about having as many girls as you can, and women are bad, and I'm just like, throughout history, men have been, the men who built Western civilization and succeeded were the men willing to throw themselves on the grenade. They were the men who were willing to sacrifice themselves for the world they believed in. Some of these men were the ones who yelled Deus Vult, and were in the Crusades. Mm-hmm. And, as much to the Christians who may not want to hear this, even the Islamic jihadis, these were men who were fighting and dying because they were like, you must live the way I demand it. There was a demand. Now we got a lot of guys who are like, I don't want to deal with hardship, so I refuse to. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, that's like, you're a pussy, dude. And I'm using that word intentionally to insult them. Look, guys today that we value and honor are the ones who run into a burning building and die. They're the first responders who run into the towers on 9/11, trying to save as many people as possible, and then the buildings collapse on them. They're the men and women who enlist to go serve our country and our interests and protect our interests, even if bad people are in politics. It's about the service and duty to this country. And then there's this sphere of influence where guys are like, you know what, guys, you're mistreated and feminists are bad, so you should not be an honorable man or a man of virtue. you should be as degenerate and mean-spirited as they are so that you can experience pleasure. That's really what it is. And maybe I'm being a little bit crass, but a lot of these guys are basically saying, don't suffer. You should just have whatever you want. Don't let them take it from you. And I'm just like, I don't know. I always thought being a man was you're born in the dirt. You're stepped on. You're treated like crap. You're spit on. And by the time you're a man, you're carved out of stone and you are unfazed by the trivialities of the world. But now we have a lot of young men being influenced by guys who look like they're carved out of stone, but they're wads of cookie dough.
Yeah.
They've never actually fought. They've never gone through hardship. They've never been homeless. They've never been trounced upon or disrespected. And I'm not saying all of them. I'm saying some of these guys are acting like they have been when they're not.
One of the things I like to draw a distinction between gravitas versus bravado. Bravado is big, it's flashy, right? You can put bravado on a credit card. You can get a flashy car and you can get a big house and you can act the part, right? But those men typically have very weak spines. A man who has gravitas creates a sense of gravity around him that's based on overcoming suffering. And he doesn't need to announce himself. He doesn't need to, be flashy. He can just walk into a room and people somehow orient towards that man. That's a man who has righteously overcome suffering. And one of the things I wanted to say about the first responders is men are naturally drawn to seek glory. And of course, being a first responder, being a soldier, rushing into the buildings on 9/11, things like that are naturally very glorious. But we've lost a sense of the glory of righteous fatherhood. We don't honor fathers in the way that we once did in our society. And there can be something equally glorious about a father having kids, having, say, 8 kids, whatever, when he starts at age 20 and faithfully works a blue-collar job to support his family so his kids grow up and have even more kids than he did. And being that man who plants himself like a tree and supports the growth of all of that, that is as glorious as running into a building on 9/11, not to take anything away from that. But we've lost the sense of honoring that. And so if we can bring back the sense of glory and fatherhood, God-glorifying fatherhood, I think a lot of this stuff will get fixed.
How do we teach young men to be men?
They're fathers.
Well, I get it, but what are we seeing now? We're seeing a large amount of young men are entering their 30s as virgins, and that's not to say that they should be going out and banging women. It should be that it's saying that they should be married and having children by that age, and not to give any special privileges to myself. I wasn't married, and I only had a kid recently. I'm 39. But I think it's fair to say that our society has driven a lot of young men into a wayward area. And in my experience, I would say don't do the things that I did. Find someone you love and care about as soon as you can and have those kids. But a lot of young men are playing video games all day. They're not going outside. They're not engaging in sports. They're eating terrible food. In Japan, they have a group of young men they call hikikomori. You've heard of this?
Yep.
They lock themselves in their bedrooms and play video games all day and do nothing. And we've got that problem too.
Yeah.
So if their fathers aren't teaching them, what do we do as a society? Or is the answer really just a bit cynical? We wait. And conservatives who do teach their kids will just out-reproduce them? It's a sad prospect.
Well, I think it's twofold. I say kind of quick, fathers, but we need strong and willing fathers, right? I think we have a lot of avoidant men that exist. We also have a lot of weak men who let the mothers take over the role of the father as well, even if they're in the household. So they cave in. They allow the child to do the thing that they want to do, right? Because, well, it's a lot easier to just make my child my friend and just give them the thing that they want, but it's not the thing that they need. They need to get up and get off the couch and go get a job. They need to learn these things. They need to have responsibility. They need to learn to sacrifice. So I do think that the fathers, it's not just enough for them to be there. It's not just enough for them to go to work. They have to be actively involved in their child's life. And I would venture to say that that young man that went from the age of 17 into the mid-20s, stuck at home playing video games, is a young man who is depressed, right?
Yep.
I play video games. We all play video games. That's fine. But there's a balance in life, right? You play video games outside of the responsibilities and the duties that you have as a young man, right? It's to supplement. It's to take, some sort of distraction.
I view video games as, I'll put it this way. If I could skateboard every single day for 8 hours, I would, but your body breaks down. You have to rest. You can't, right, so you need days off. Well, then on a day that I can't, because I'm it's a rest day, what do I do to rest? and then put my mind in a different space. Video games are for when you have no choice but to slow down and rest, otherwise you're going to burn yourself out. Not something you should be doing 24/7, where instead you burn yourself out on video games.
Correct.
To be fair, though, I have respect for pro gamers who create an entertaining job for people and work really hard at their craft and take care of themselves. That's totally fine. But for the people who are doing... The issue I find with video games as opposed to any other sport is that if you're doing a sport as a hobby and not a career, you're in shape. You're going to be healthy, you're going to live longer, you're going to be sharper. But if you're doing video games all day and nothing else, your mind might, your dexterity might be pretty good, and your mind might be quicker in some respects, but without the physical activity, you're going to be weak, out of shape, and it's going to be hard for you, and you will get depressed. As we know, one of the easiest ways to cure your average depression, not like serious, defective depression, is just exercise.
Right.
You go for a run, you get a dopamine release, and you feel really good. And they say for people who are depressed, you need to start exercising. And I think for a lot of guys, that's probably it.
It's a good start.
Yeah.
So I think the trick here is, how do we properly motivate men? Now, I'm like you. I came to a lot of this stuff later in my life, and I don't want to come off like Will is the authority about all this stuff. My authority is God's word. And God says to be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Do we believe that that is good and just and righteous and beautiful and glorious? Do we believe that? Because if we really believe that as both men and women, then we will obey that and we will discover the blessings of that. If we want to say, I don't know, I don't think that that's so good, then you're not going to find the right way to motivate people. You can incentivize people with social shaming. You can incentivize them with $5,000. You can put them on the cover of a magazine. But ultimately, unless you believe in your core that being a father, being a mother, having a family is glorifying in the grandest way, I don't think you're going to have the strength to get through it, especially not today, because our entire world is set up for single people and incentivizes single people. It's an uphill battle. You will be swimming upstream if you want to be a righteous and a godly husband and a father. And so what will sustain you through those challenges? You have to do it for some reason bigger than yourself. And doing it for Western civilization, I don't think even that's big enough.
It's hard when... It's hard to get a single individual to change their life for a society that's broken.
Yes and no. Yes and no. Because when you can show them a picture of something that's so much more beautiful than anything they could have imagined, and you inspire them with a vision, that can get them to change.
That's true. I suppose it's optimist versus pessimist.
Yes, but I think it's even deeper than that. I think there's a longing that's built into every human heart to want that. And I think it's been buried, and I think it's been suppressed, and I think it's been shamed, and I think you have institutes like The View that are doing that. But ultimately, I think it's part of us as a being. And if you can awaken that in somebody, I think you can find them change very, very quickly.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.